Go ahead and take a, I guess first we'll start with the pledge and then do roll call. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll. Assessor Northern Cry. Highway Commissioner Kazmierczak. Here. Clerk Gialamas here. Supervisor Marask. Here.
I'm here, but I think you guys get to vote for me by electronic means before I'm really here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Trustee Jones.
Here.
Trustee McKenzie. Trustee Carabota. Here. Trustee Sweet.
Here.
I guess the first order of business would be to make a motion to allow Laura to participate via phone.
Yes, she's absent today due to a family emergency, so pursuant to Section 7, Sub A, Sub 3 of the Open Meetings Act. That's a qualifying reason to participate electronically pursuant to the rules the board adopted, but you do need to make a motion to permit her to do that.
Motion to permit Supervisor Marask to participate in the meeting electronically.
Second.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
Trustee Sweet.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now I'm here.
Okay, take it away.
I think someone else has to chair it though. I think that the supervisor cannot publicly do it by phone. I
Okay.
mean, I don't think I can chair the meeting by phone, correct, Karen?
Well, there's nothing that really says that you can't, but it might be.
I don't have any problem doing it if everybody.
Yeah, no, the only problem is that we wouldn't be able to see who needed to be recognized for purposes of debate.
Sure. So, okay, guys, first order of business is pick a chairman.
I nominate Susan Sweeney to act as chairman for the meeting.
Second.
Okay. Having a first and a second, I call the roll. Trustee Jones.
No.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
Trustee Sweet.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, didn't receive 3 votes.
Can we, Laura can vote.
Oh, Laura. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
She needs to vote.
I'm sorry, no, I was gonna then declare, but that's okay.
Claire's not
Not
here.
here.
I'm sorry?
Oh, Claire's just coming in now.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. All right, she's walking in now, but we still have to finish the original vote right
We
now.
vote on the floor to Susan Sweeney to act as chair.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yes, your turn to vote.
Oh, yes. Nominate you.
So it's 2-2 so far.
And I voted no, Kim voted no, Jason didn't vote yes, and I wanted to nominate you, Claire.
Oh, thank you. So you have to vote no and then accept the nomination to chair the meeting.
Let's see,
First,
Susan.
did vote yes, but yes, no.
But Laura voted no?
Right. Okay, then I'll vote no so we can
I'm
move
fine.
this more.
Okay, so
Okay.
now I'm gonna nominate Claire to run this meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Steve, you can call, or Pete, you can call the roll.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie.
Yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
And Trustee Sweeney.
Yes.
And then Supervisor Marask.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Claire, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any public participation requests?
Yes. No, we don't, but we have it on the agenda, so if anybody, you can ask for it, if we have it.
Okay.
But I will do it, right?
Okay, so are there any public participation candidates? I don't see anybody. So no public participation tonight? So we move on to the tax levy workshop.
So we had prepared several levies and I'm sorry, Trustee McKenzie, may I be recognized?
Supervisor Marask asked to be recognized.
Hold on, she's relocating to your seat.
Oh. I probably should watch. So what I was going to say is, in our packet, you have a levy from Walter, and then we emailed a proposed levy, the applicant on Friday at 5. Then trustee Green had asked for some historical data, which had been sent to her and everybody else yesterday or today. So having said all that, I'm recommending a 2.9%. I think that our starting basis today is that we just have to pick an estimated, and I think it's my understanding everybody can agree on an estimated to use last year's 2018 for town funds. Is that correct?
Are you
It's
asking?
estimated.
Yes, most townships, most townships do adopt their previous levy as an estimated levy to post until they have their levy meeting. So the board needs to determine that tonight, and then I think we kind of wanted to go through the levy to see if the board had any questions about it, so that at the actual board meeting, when there's a lot of things on the agenda, this item will go quickly.
So Laura, did you make a motion?
No, I was just trying to get the answer. My motion would be, like, to make it a 2.9, but I understand and think that others want to keep it maybe as for the estimated, just flat, flat from 2018, for purposes of capturing the tax rate for new construction and for purposes of maximizing the tax dollar. I would, for the final levy, want to do a 2.9, which represents a nominal increase over the cost of living, or CPI, which is 1.9. And, but to get the estimated, I know we can go up, we can go down. So I think for purposes of this, mine, it's my understanding that the estimated is just that, and that. But the whole point of this workshop was so everybody understands where we are and what we're doing. And the only reason was that I was doing it 2.9 because it was a fairly nominal increase, but it also did allow us to maximize the tax dollar and capture we won't have the EAV until I believe it was April. So I know Karen might have been explain it better than me, but I'm willing to do an estimated base on 2018 if somebody wants to make that money. And then the whole point of this tonight was to discuss various levies, so we don't stumble around there, right?
That makes sense. So I'll make a motion that we adopt as an estimate the 2018 actual tax levy that we passed for.
Second.
I'm sorry, Laura, you got cut off.
No, I just said, okay, I thought I heard someone say second.
Yes, Kim seconded.
Okay.
So do I have
Can I
to be
make a motion
specific?
again?
Yeah, do I have to be specific that that was first for road and bridge and then for,
Yes, you do.
So
Okay,
the first
so
one on the
go to
agenda.
item 3 first.
okay.
Which
So,
is general
I'm sorry, your motion is to-
together, and there's a specific amount. I don't have it, but
Could I hear the motion again, please?
Yes.
somebody have it?
So I don't have it handy.
I have it.
Oh, should we do this as last year's?
Yeah.
Which is in-
So I make a motion to adopt an estimated tax levy using, or based on the 2018 actual tax levy for general town fund
Second.
and general assistance. Sorry, I'm sorry.
So I'm just going to clarify that that's the one that is the summary of 5,046,286, correct?
We're checking.
I'm looking at the thing we printed out, the sheet we printed out. And the
Oh.
2018 actual that was passed in discussion.
You're looking at
Can we
the,
get,
We don't have the sheets.
we get copies of that, by the way?
Yeah, we don't have those sheets.
Well, it's from the website,
They were-
okay. It's Lee Truck.
The one that was, that they sent to us, is
Is that from the email you sent to us earlier,
The
right?
email I sent to you was 2.99
Right, so if we can get a copy of last year.
Okay, 2018.
Yes.
This is the one on the website you want?
Didn't you have the 2018 number as the actual number?
I think it's,
So it's 5,011,690?
not the actual.
So it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it.
Ordinance 2018-3.
Here's 2018, and then here's one I sent you guys on the website.
And then do you have, okay.
Thank you.
Doreen, I'm wondering, Doreen, if we can get another copy of this one, can I get a copy?
I think I have two right here, hold on, I just want to make sure. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
Kim and I will share, and you guys share.
Thank you.
Kim will share this one, is that
Yeah,
okay?
it's just a.
Let's do one more, let's do one more for Kim.
It's Chris.
No,
We're gonna share.
I'll just look on the website.
Yeah, it's there, 5,046,280.
Yes, $5,046,286. That was the ordinance number 2018-3 that we passed last year.
Correct.
And so my motion is to adopt this as our estimate for 2019.
Right. And Kim seconded that, so we just need to vote.
yes.
I just wanted to clarify. So that will be, I'm sorry.
So that will be our estimated levy for GA and Tampa, right?
Yes.
B.
May it be recognized?
Are we gonna have discussion?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
may I be recognized?
Yes.
Thank you. This was also brought up, about a million times at the legislative update sessions in Springfield that I attended, as well as general meetings that I attended, and the trustees meeting that I attended in Springfield over this last couple of weeks. It was made very clear that we have to recognize as townships House Bill 348 that was passed and signed in by the governor as law. And it was signed into law despite a 45-minute meeting with our representatives for TOI and the governor. And it allows McHenry County to decide to quote-unquote consolidate. I object to that term, as I mentioned there. It's not a consolidation, it's a loss of township government. And it also addresses 4 road districts in Lake County. The big concern from many of the representatives and from the officials that spoke was that this bill now that is out there in this law can simply be brought up again by anyone of that proper authority and to be amended or at least added to add Cook County. And it is clear in Springfield going back and forth that that is the trend. The trend is that if it gets up there as far as a vote, that we're in trouble as far as the township. So that's number one. I think it'd be much better publicity. I think it'd be stronger for our township if we're able to show that we are cutting our levy, even if it's not even the estimated levy, that we're cutting our levy without cutting programs, that our quality is still the best. You know, the things we do for the community are the best, and we're really stretching the dollar. That's number one. Number two, based on the meeting that we had and the expert that came in from Cook County at our last meeting, it's clear you don't levy unless you need the money. We don't need the money. Now, I'm not here to say, well, look, it gives us greater opportunity to grab more money from other businesses. It's very clear that if the levy is cut, it reduces taxes based on that expert that spoke with us, and it's on our tape, that everyone in the community saves money on their taxes. You know, there's going to be a lot less screaming and yelling and a lot less pressure on the township and a lot more camaraderie with the community if we can show that we are being efficient with the funds and that we're not raising the levy just to raise the levy. And under the law, my read of the law is, you're not supposed to do that if you don't need the money. The last point is, and that's why there's been legislation specifically passed as well, is to townships that hold on, or governmental bodies that hold on to too much money. Well, that was brought about because of townships. So I think the proper message is to show, and we can't afford it. We can afford to do this. We have the money to do this. Doesn't mean we're going to cut a program. Doesn't mean we're going to cut a salary. And it's also something that if we give out benefits to the employees who work so hard, but we gave out benefits to the employees of over $350,000 in medical and related benefits to their employment packages to those who, most of the employees that utilize that, plus about $38,000 to $40,000 overall pay increase. With all that in mind, I think that it's best that we cut the levy. Also, they stressed one of the ways is to try to bring down costs. That's what bring down tax levies was what the overall strong impression I got is through using intergovernmental agreements to try to get things done. So here, if we go ahead and say, look, we're going to increase 2.9%, that's money. It's a lot of money. And when you go ahead and you issue a levy like that, oh, it's just an estimate. No, no, no. Sends the wrong message, number one. Number two is you take that amount of money and you go by times 5 or times 6, because that's what the taxpayers have to generate gross to have that money put aside and taken away from them. That's why people don't have that kind of money. They don't have $10,000 in a savings account or $6,000 or $8,000 in taxes, because it costs so much money to be able to be gross to put that kind of money away. We're really hurting. Also, Illinois has just got the biggest exodus that's going on ever. And I've been talking about this ever since I sat down in this chair. And we've got to heed it. And I think the message we do, I'm looking for a cut in the levy overall. I'm looking for a cut. We're not supposed to be levying at all if we don't need the money. There is a concern about if you cut the levy too much, that you have to go into truth and taxation to raise your levy next time, which is notice to the community and input by the community. That's not a bad thing. So my contention is we shouldn't be levying at all. That's my first contention. We don't need the money. Second of all, though, is that if there was going to be a compromise position, that we would present an estimate levy that would cut our levy by 20% across the board. We can do it. We can afford it. Nothing has to change. Everything's fine. If we go back in now, and we're going to go ahead and go after more, we need greater money next year, a year later, there's ways to do that. It's not a scary thing. It's a little more work, but it's not a scary thing. So my contention is I think we should present the 2018-3, and I would move to amend the motion for 28-3 to be adopted as our estimated levy, less 20%, with that 20% to be worked out by our managers of our departments, at which they're very effective and they work very hard to come up with whatever we need to do to address that, which I don't think is going to be all that difficult. But this is the levy now. I'm not talking about a budget. But because, as we've been told over and over, one has nothing to do with the other. That we submit, that my motion to amend the motion is that we adopt the 2018-3 less 20%.
Second.
So can I just clarify? So if you're going to adopt publicly your estimate of levy, then I think it would be better to just say reduce all of the line items by 20% instead of saying reduce it overall by 20% and leave it up to the administration, because then that act isn't a public act. So, you know what I mean? So, okay.
Well, whatever line items that are selected by...
But just for the estimate, since the estimate is what they have to like give to the newspaper tomorrow to publish, it would just be cleaner.
I see what you're saying, but it would be cleaner. The point is that some of the lines may look kind of ridiculous because certain lines you don't want to cut by 20%, certain you do. You may have a line you cut by 20% and it'll leave $1.50 on the line or something like that. So without going into all that, I would just say less 20%. I see what your point is, though. That's what my concern is. It would look kind of ridiculous on certain lines cutting by 20%, because some of the lines are nominal, some of them are much greater. That's what my concern would be.
But there's only the estimate that you're putting out there for the public, so you can change that at your levy hearing if it's too low.
Right, but then when you face though is that when you come back and you're looking at the actual levy, you start getting some ridicule because gee, there's only $180 in office supplies for a whole year. And that's been posted to the public. So I'm just saying 20%. The figure we would use would be $5,046,286 less 20%. And that would be the figure.
I just want to make a reminder, we don't have the exact line items in the levy like we do in the
budget. So if you take a look at the levy, we just have commodities, there's basically 5, if you want to call them line items, under each department. So this setup is a little bit different than what we have in the budget.
So the number, yeah, that's a very good point.
Right.
So the number I would say is 4,037,028.
But as we said last year, okay, so county estimated is silly, because if we have to come back and do, and you want to do it, and perhaps the majority wants to do it flat, you can't do it, then you're raising it, it's ridiculous. So this is an estimated, and I'm not going to belabor this because it is an estimated, but Dave's point, there's like arguments against all of it. If Liz Coyne did an excellent summary for commercial, it's $26,635,614. That's that. For residential, it's $8,701,120. So.
Can you repeat that? What is this? That is the amount that.
Corollary is we got this lab, that taxes go down. The corollary that if you raise it by 2.9, the taxes go up is not correct. That's number one. But you can't, to cut the estimated 20% is starting at a viewpoint, especially for what Dave just, can get out the publicity. And so there's many lines that only sit, and then it's for estimated purpose. This is estimate, and it's a very good compromise in June 2018 December. You can always, if we're not voting on the levy, does everybody get this?
Yes, but what numbers were you just referring to for commercial and residential? Is that?
Okay, I could Liz do a chart, and I'm not sure if she's there or not. And I asked her for a breakdown, and I'll send this to you guys, tomorrow, that I've been a little tied up in the hospital. To break down, we had a department head meeting, and I asked her to break down, if she could, what the percentage of, what the amount was by, unincorporated, Park Ridge, Nile, Port Road, Glenview, Displays, and home. From commercial to residential, and luckily she could, because they coded, right? So really, the commercial is going to act, and Displays is doing a very similar thing, and so is Displays Park District. The commercial is going to act as a method to lower the residential property tax owner tax dollars. So you will maximize your tax dollars. So Dave soundbites might be very great sounding, but it's not accurate.
Now, Laura, when it,
And I'm sorry, this is my position. I will send you guys this sheet, and I didn't know if Liz was going to be there or not. But right now, for estimating, this is like not. You don't want to start at a lower and you have to go up, right? So I would say, Carolyn, procedure, do we have to vote on Dave's amendment, or do we vote on Clara's original?
I'd like to respond.
You have to vote on the amendment.
Yes,
but there's still discussion.
Yeah, we have people that want to still discuss. So Susan, was your question answered? On what Laura was referring
No, the
to?
28 million and the 8 million, all I could hear was those two numbers. What do they represent? The commercial increase?
So I'm going to tell you, the commercial new construction, is 20, the total of all the unincorporated Harvard and Mark Grove, Glenview, Displays. 26,635,614. The residential is 8,701,120. The total assessed value, 35,336,734. So we want the new businesses to take the tax burden off of our residents, I think. And we already have the memory clinic, we have so many in other districts. The Blaine Park District, Blaine City, they all recognize. I don't know what Park Ridge is doing because they're on a different discipline. But for purposes of estimating, that, I thought it was an important, or for purposes of the revenue, the breakdown to me was important.
Laura, I just want to let Susan and Dave know, that we did get a summary of new construction and our,
But that doesn't have the breakdown that she's talking about.
That's the breakdown, I asked her to do a breakdown. Because that was total.
Clear.
So I know there was concern that, property owners, regular tax paying property owners who might, to buy a house, upgrade their house or whatever, so they're, raise it or kept it, that we go on. But what I suspected was borne out by some, literally by 4 or 5 times. Commercial is insanity. And that's even before the marijuana that are opening on Main Road, and it's not even coming up. But this is all of the different new constructions that are going to be on the tax roll now, this year, 2019 to 20. To me, it maximizes people looking. That's why there's a very interesting article about the claims that, when the EAD comes out, it will actually, you're going to be spreading the wealth, even further and maximize their tax dollar by allowing the commercials to have the rate that pays for the residential, if that makes sense.
okay, we just got the summary of the new construction for 2019. That's broken down between commercial and residential. Kim would like to speak, and then Susan, so,
Okay.
Thanks.
So, just to address something that Trustee Carboda said, when you reduce the levy 2.9%, that does not translate to 2.9% or whatever, 20% savings in the person's tax bill. They do not receive a 20% discount in their tax bill just because the levy is reduced 20%. And the woman from Cook County, whose name escapes me, was specifically clear on that. So just last year, they reduced the tax levy 20%. Your tax bills were not reduced 20%, and they won't be. So that is a misrepresentation of facts. And I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Susan?
Okay, some information that might be helpful. I'm going to pass down that I just pulled up before I left the house. Looking at the facts of what we actually have in our fund balance for the different accounts, we have asked in this budget for, what was the final that we said, 5 million or so, whatever. 5046. And then with the amendment, it comes down significantly for 20% of that, what I seconded Dave's amendment to be. And I do concur with the comments that Trustee Carboda had just mentioned. But so if you look at what we have in basically reserves or surplus or fund balances, based on what we have in 2019, it's 12, and based on our audit that was released in May, or I guess it was June that we got the audit, we have $12,491,000. Now, we did abate, so there's going to be some money coming out of that, and I'm going to look to you, Chris, to answer some questions as it pertains to that. But prior to that, we had $11,293,000 in reserves. The reason why we halted the levy that we levied last year in December was because we didn't need the money. In fact, we already exceeded 2.5 times the average of the last 3 years' expenditures in general assistance. And I just did the calculations this afternoon. We're exceeding it again based on the last 3 years of what we have in general assistance. We shouldn't have more than 2,011,000, I think it is, in reserves. And we'll have 2,500,000. So I don't know how we could rightfully even have the ability, without violating the law, to levy what you're suggesting that we levy for general assistance. We're once again out of the compliance with what the law dictates. And just for a refresher of what the law specifically says in the statute, it's 60 ILCS 1/85-65 that says accumulation of funds. Township funds, excluding the township's capital fund, shall not exceed an amount equal to or greater than 2.5 times the annual average expenditure of the previous fiscal years. So in looking at the numbers for general assistance, the request here was for $852,024. Now, if I look at the last 3 years, which we have on record, which is 2016, 17, and 18, and I average those last three, I total those last 3 years, divided by 3 to average it, that amounts to $804,000 that would be the average amount. And if you times that times 2.5 years, we shouldn't have more than $2,011,720 in our surplus fund. In what I just passed down to you, you can see that the general assistance fund has $2,568,000. So that's just clarification. Now, when you look at town fund, what the request for town fund alone for the levy on this budget that was presented to us today was a request of $4,345,147. When we look at what we have in surplus or excess for the town fund, we have $7,674,000. So once again, we have well over a year and a half's worth of excess or surplus. So, you know, and just as a point, and then in road and bridge, our surplus is $2,247,000. So our total surplus again that we have is $12,491,799. In 2018, when we did this abatement and we halted what we did in December, when we did that in March, we had $11,293,000. So we just grew our surplus in 1 year by $1,200,000. I don't think we have any right to go back to the taxpayer and ask them to levy this amount. It makes no sense to me. We have the money.
Yes, Dave.
Thank you, Trustee McKenzie. I don't operate in sound bites. I grew up on the south side, and I say what I want to say, and I say it boldly, and I say it with clarity, and I don't say it for political gain or aspiration. It's straight to the point. Also, when you study economics, a business is arguably, and it depends on who you read, is arguably at least 5 households. So if we want to go ahead and say, hey, look, we have an opportunity to nail the businesses and maybe take down some of the money off the households. Okay, that's wonderful, but that business moves. Who buy goes to households. It's really basic economics. It's 101 when it comes to economics. The goal here is not to say, okay, where can we get more money? And as we get that more money, by the way, we're grabbing more money from the taxpayer, but because we're now got these businesses we can nail, we can reduce some of it that's hitting the taxpayer. Wrong attitude. Proper way to operate in life, 80% is proper attitude. Second.
Dave, can I just stop you?
Sure.
Because I think we're getting off the topic.
Well, I want to approach.
I just want to bring us back to what we're here for.
Yeah, we're here.
It's for the estimate, and we can talk about all these other things with respect to the levy itself, but this is just for the estimate. And, you know, I may be the reason and the culprit for asking for the same or actual 2018 as our base, because I haven't had a chance, and I can't believe you've had a chance to really study and analyze where we're at with our 2018 budget to 2019 budget, and where the surplus came from, the additional surplus, because until we know that, I don't think you can then go on and say, I mean, you can, but I don't think it's supported that we can just cut the levy by 20% because we think that's a good reason, a good number. I think that before you do that, a lot of things have to happen and more analysis has to happen on where we are with the actuals compared to budget. I don't know where the surplus came from as I sit here, but I'm gonna know by the time we actually make a determination. But for the estimate's sake, this is just an estimate. And we've been through this before, we know how it works. It's just an estimate. This is not going to be the end-all be-all. And I know I'm not prepared to cut or increase the budget. So that's why I made it clear that I wanted to just have an estimate based on what we actually levied last year. After we did all of these analyses and discussions, that's where we ended up. We had almost the same surplus. We had almost the same expenses. We had almost the same assessed valuation. So in my opinion, this is not the time to make a determination on the actual 2019 tax levy. It's just the estimate. So that's, I think that we have to just take a vote on the estimate. I think right now we're going way, way past just the estimate. Because I can tell you that I can't analyze what you guys are saying, and I can't. I have a lot of work to do.
Can I, is it okay if I finish?
No, are you calling the question, or?
Well, I thought Dave was, well, I'm sorry I cut you off. Let Dave finish and then.
There's also the statement that I made a misrepresentation, that I said that the taxes, the levy's cut by 20%, each household's going to save 20%. I never said that. You never know where it's going to go with that. You don't know how it's going to work out. The bottom line is that no matter what you analyze, so there's no misrepresentation, no matter what you analyze and look to, and I greatly respect that, I always like that when professionals look to caution, which is very good. This is an important decision. But here, it's really clear to me, we don't need the money. No matter what you analyze, we don't need the money. I didn't want the estimate to be level the last time either. And once something's estimated to be something, it's really hard to bring it down to where it's supposed to be. There are times, temporary court orders tend to always become permanent. And that's why I become very concerned. I raised the issue right away. Just like the tax for World War II, it was a temporary tax. We are still paying it today.
Okay. Dave.
So I would stand on my motion.
We did change our 2018 tax levy from the estimate.
We did.
Oh, we did, I know.
Yeah, so I think that you have to have some trust in this board that we are going to discuss and consider and address all of the concerns from all of us.
But I just don't think we can present an estimate for $5,046,286 with the numbers that we have here. I want to be on record to say that I don't think it's proper. I don't think we can do it. I don't think we can give an estimate.
I'm sorry, Chris, I will recognize you in a second. I just, from my point of view, I wouldn't say that no surplus is our goal. I don't know if that's your goal, but that wouldn't be what I think is financially sound for any organization.
I agree.
Okay, so I think that we have to keep that in mind when we, yes, we do have surplus. Yes, we are over 1.5 times for GA. We have to address that, no doubt. Yes, we have to consider the fact that we do have surplus and we have more surplus from 2018. We have to consider all that. But at the same time, I don't think we say zero levy. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying that it's improper to have any levy because we have enough money. You keep saying we have enough money, we have enough money. We just don't know how much is enough money at this point, right?
My position was I don't think we should be levying at all. I don't think we're supposed to be doing that because of the money we have. However, as a compromise position for the estimate purposes, to have it at an estimate of $4,037,286, which is a 20% cut off of the $5,046,286, which I think is very easy with the numbers that we have. It's really clear that there's no way we need that $1 million is going to affect the surpluses that we have.
Okay.
I'm going to have to call the question.
Well,
I think that's open.
Let me just ask Chris, he had his, our accountant, he had his hand up.
So two things. I just want to talk about the surplus. I think, well, I know the reason why we had a surplus was, remember that for the audit, we were collecting from the 2017 tax levy still, based on the timing of how the levy works. So obviously in 17, our levy was higher than it was in 18. So that obviously created a surplus because we were receiving more revenues in that fiscal year. So you should see in next year's audit, your revenues will go down because obviously the new levies have kicked in at that point. And then the second point, for the levy too, remember that just because what we ask for from Cook County isn't what we receive. For instance, last year, the board voted on the 2018 levy was roughly 4.2 million. From Cook County though, because of stop loss provisions, we only received about 3.9, which was 7% less than what the board approved of.
I'm sorry, what, how much percentage? I didn't hear.
Almost about 7% less than what we actually approved of. And if you go on the Cook County clerk's website, you can actually pull the actual tax levies that the county approved. So, 9 times out of 10, what the board asked for in Cook County is always going to be less. It sometimes varies between 3, I've seen it always upwards of 10%. So there is a cut within there as well that you kind of don't really see once that levy gets approved sometime in April from the county.
But $1 million, we'll have plenty of surplus if we levy for $1 million less, isn't that correct?
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to speak upon on that part. I just was just saying, hey, we are receiving less than actually what the board's
Right,
approving.
but we would have plenty of surplus if we forget about $1 million,
Well,
right?
I think that's unfair to.
I'm just saying, but you're raising the surplus. I'm saying that we'll have significant surplus, $1 million or
So
no.
what numbers were you quoting? Was that 2017?
So I looked at the 2018 tax levy that was on the website that the board approved, and then when I do the audit, I actually get the actual levy from the clerk's office, and that number was $307,000 less than what the board approved. You can actually see that in the audit. There's a scheduled audit report that has the last 3-year tax levies. If you notice what was approved by the board, which is online, is less than what we actually received from.
So about 300,000?
That was just,
Yeah, about
that was just-
308,000.
Yeah, 308,000.
that was for the town fund.
Town fund,
He's
the only thing on town fund.
referring to 4.2 down to 3.9. What about GA?
Real quick.
It's like what Wally said last year. You-
Remember, GA, we went to 0, so
Right.
we owe roughly back to the county over $200,000 from GA right now.
Wait, can you explain that? I don't understand that.
Okay, so before we abated, we obviously asked for a tax levy for GA. Well, the county still started distributing the tax levies to the GA fund, right before the actual abatement kicked in. So we're responsible for paying that money back. The county is going to actually send us a bill. They're just so far behind that they have not done that yet. So that money in our cash in GA fund, once we pay it back, obviously will go down.
Yeah,
And I can actually get you the exact number. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
So
thought we
the-
were assured if we did it timely that that would not happen.
You know, I can't control what the county
I
does.
mean,
I mean, just from the audit
That's why
alone.
we wanted to do it right away to ensure that that
But
wouldn't
we have
happen.
the money, it's not gonna be.
Yeah, we have 2,568,000 in that account. So we're gonna go from 2,568 to 2,368,000.
I'm just stating the facts, as if the audit.
It's all, right.
Okay, does anybody have,
125,000.
sorry, does anybody have anything else on the estimate vote alone?
I just have a quick question
Yes,
for
Bob.
Chris. That 200,000 that eventually GA will have to rebate to the county, is that going to go back to the taxpayers, or are they going to spend it on Trojan Hospital?
I don't think it goes directly back to the taxpayers, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they do with the money. I'm just an
It's
accountant.
not just our concern.
It's not going to Maine Township, no.
It could.
No, Maine Township's gonna get back to the county.
It sounds like,
It's
you
not
know,
going back to Maine Township.
It's gonna pay a bill that the taxpayers will otherwise have to
And
pay.
that's what they have.
Not
No,
specifically to
that's
Maine
Cook County as a
Township.
whole.
So, I just don't like the argument, well, we can keep the 200,000, someone else is gonna take it, I just don't like that argument.
But that's-
Yeah.
I don't give any credence to it.
Okay. Okay, I think that we have to vote on the amended motion first. Okay, can you call the question?
Supervisor Marasco?
No.
Trustee McKenzie?
No.
Trustee Jones?
No,
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee Sweeney?
Yes.
Okay, can we vote on the original motion that I made? Do I have to make it again?
No.
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Respectfully, no.
Trustee Sweeney?
I would say no, and I want to add a comment that that calls for a general assistance of $827,000 when we have $2,568,000 in reserve, more or less, depending on what we will have to pay back to Cook County. Chris, if you can help me with that, but that's the reason I'm voting against that. And
Can you say that again?
that budget calls for...
Wait, what budget? The levy?
Excuse me, the levy, I didn't mean to say budget.
The estimated
The
levy.
estimated levy is calling for something that right now is in violation of what the state statute calls us to adhere to, which is to not exceed 2.5 times the average annual expenditures. And we are. So I will vote no.
Okay, so the motion is passed. I would like a little bit of clarification or understanding about, because my understanding of what Susan was referring to as the statute, I think that is it's not a requirement. I think it is a standard that we need to try to live up to, or however you want to put it, but it's not, like, we're not in violation of the law, is that correct?
No, you're not.
Wait, Laura, I'm asking Carrie Lynn.
Oh, sorry.
So we can't extend more than 2.5. That is, there's a statute that came into effect that says that.
Right.
But the sheet that you passed out is the balances as of February 28th, 2018. So that is not, or 2019.
It's going to be reduced somewhat.
Yeah, so
No.
so that's 9 months ago. I mean, so that's not our standing, that's not what the balance is in that account now.
Do we know what the balance is, Chris?
And what Chris was saying is, you
Yeah,
have
I have to
to pay a certain amount back to Cook County.
It's 200,000.
Until lower it, I believe.
No, that's,
It's not gonna,
I don't think so, Laura, because that's just coming out of our cash, correct, Chris? That's not
But
gonna,
that's part of our fund.
but it's not part of the surplus number.
Oh.
No, it's not, no, because on the audit report, I set up a payable due to,
right. It's not part of the
so it's
surplus.
not part of the reserve, no. It's just gonna come out of cash and then be adjusted to the payable.
And the TOI conference,
We're looking at the balance sheet for February 28th, 2019. Is that what we're referencing?
Yes.
Okay.
and the TOI conferences,
I don't think that'll be the balance.
they brought up these lawsuits now that we have to be really cautious. They brought that up in both days of both sessions.
Well, so,
Because it subjects us to suit.
well, look, nobody wants to subject us to.
No, I know, I
suit.
agree, I know you don't.
Yeah,
I know you don't.
and,
But I'm just saying, if it turns out that we are, and someone wants to do it, they can. So that's what we do.
okay, so are we at all exposed as an estimate for estimate purposes?
No, because the estimate isn't the levy, and we don't even know what our expenditures are here. So we just need to put something on file so that the public has kind of general notice where we're going to be at, so that when we have the meeting to adopt it.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that right now for the estimate. We do have to worry about it, however, for the actual levy. That is a big concern. We can't.
Yeah, I think it was is that if this estimate were to go through, in reality, then we would be over. That's the point, I think.
But our estimate's never gone through. We always have much more thought, much more analysis, and the actual levy. So I'm pretty sure that's gonna happen again, since we've already had quite a bit of discussion, and it's not done, right? So, lots more to think about. If I can ask Dave that if you, and you already said, to lower the levy, I would like to see, because I don't have time to do this, and I don't think it's something that we should push on to Chris or Dana. I would like to see how this cash flow is gonna work. If you're saying, I heard first 0 levy, but then I think you backed off of that, I think, right? I don't know.
I am considering that, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
so I would like to know what your actual proposal is gonna be, and Susan, you too, and how that's gonna cash flow, so that, like, what are we gonna end up with in surplus?
And what I'm saying is that, and I'm saying this without being, naughty, without being any disrespectful. That's why we pay an office manager. This is why we pay our accountant. The auditor comes forward and says, this is what I want to see as a bottom line. And that's how it works in business. And these people, and that's why we pay them well, because they're very good and they're very good at what they do. But this is where that comes into play, where then I want to see, as you have a budget here that's 2.9% increase, I want to see a budget that shows how you lay it out for a 20% decrease. It's real simple. But that's what your job is. And that's what I'm asking to be done, and I would like to have that presented by our next meeting.
Oh, that I totally can see, that's not that difficult, we've done that before. But what I'm saying is that we have to be mindful of where we want to end up with these surpluses, because I think we agree, I'm not sure, but I think we all agree that 0 surplus is not our goal.
No, 0 surplus, no.
Okay.
And also you have to keep in mind the fact that the state itself is not in a very good financial situation. So we have to protect the township and we have to protect the employees. But on the other hand, I don't need a statute to tell me that you can't have 2.5 times. I would never have 2.5 times. But there are townships that had to get their hands slapped. And during the TOI conferences I went to in Springfield, as I said repeatedly, in several sessions, they brought up that these lawsuits are real, they're happening. You gotta watch it. You can't go over the 2.5.
Well, I think our goal is to not go over the 2.5.
Right, and you made that very clear.
I think we
You
all
made that
agree
very
on
clear.
that. But I think that we have to at least have some understanding of where everybody's at on what a healthy surplus is, or what an acceptable surplus is going to be, so that we can work from there. And that's why I said, because I don't know if there's going to be enough time to ask Chris or Dana to do this cash flow analysis to get to the surplus.
I think a week should be sufficient, wouldn't it be?
But they have to, but we don't even know where we're at right now, as far as like, what are we gonna agree that a healthy surplus is?
All I know is that my answer to that is that I know that our numbers are so egregiously high. I'm not gonna dive down into the weeds over $200,000 or $300,000 or whatever, or $1 million. $1 million is a lot of taxpayer money. That's $6 million of taxpayer income. But it's not a lot of money when it comes to our budget with what we have saved, if we're sitting on $12 million. And it's not fair. As we tie up that money and we have it in our accounts, it's not in the pockets of the taxpayers so that they can go ahead and invest it. They can go ahead and pay their bills. They can go ahead and put money in the bank. And so this is why our numbers are so high. I don't really see the need at all to dive down into the weeds. But if we need to do that, we can do that. It's very simple, but we've had it where we've asked for, okay, let's see a budget that's flat, let's see a budget at 2.9, let's see a budget with a 20% cut, and boom, it's the next day, we've got it online. From
Yeah, no, I think we all agree that Dana and Chris are more than capable of doing that.
Why don't we have this discussion now? I see no reason why we need more than a year's surplus. In fact, many governmental units are operating 4 to 6 months in surplus that are, around us in this community.
Yeah,
So
but we
can
have heard horror stories about not getting the money.
So that's an easy decision to make if we choose to, that we could come to an agreement on possibly. We might differ in our opinions, but what do you think is reasonable? A year and a half? I mean, it's based on, what we budget, and I just had a discussion with Dana about it today. We have about 36% of our budget left, and we've got 3 months left, so we may not even, complete what our budget is. So we have a pretty good idea of where we're coming in at right now for this coming year.
That's why I had
So
asked
I
Dana to
think, we're on track and I'd like to know from Chris, like what we're expected to take out in total.
From GA?
Because, well, we've got GA and then we've got 10%, we had
The
400,000.
GA is what he said.
That we cut 400,000 on the abatement for the town fund. So,
Town fund's accurate, the county actually reduced the taxes by the town fund payment. I have no idea why they cut distributed GA funds.
say that again.
So the town fund abatement, those distributions were reduced by the abatement. The GA fund, for some reason, the county still was distributing the taxes to the township. Maybe I can put a phone call in there and see what's going on.
But that's not part of our surplus.
Okay.
No, it's not.
But if you can just find out what our current fund balance is then,
Sure.
on
Yeah.
on the 3 different funds, that would help me. But I think at some point, we're gonna have to agree to what we think is an appropriate amount to have in reserve based on, a years of the average expenditure or, of the budget,
Okay, well,
or a year and a half.
I think if we're gonna give direction on, other than, can you show us the budget less 5%, 10%, whatever it is, or plus 10, whatever we're gonna ask, then we just have to be mindful of where that's gonna take us. And, because I have to do some research on what a healthy surplus should be, or what an average surplus is, or, sorry, I didn't go to those meetings. I don't know if you heard anything like that.
But you had a schedule that was way.
Yes, I couldn't
It was
go.
there's no way you're gonna move that.
I couldn't do it, I wanted to.
I know you tried.
Basically, yes. So,
20% off of GA is cutting it down another 160,000. And, we're so out of whack with what we have in there. I don't know how that would ever, how that's not a real conservative, thought process that we have. At least we know we have well enough for a year. We have 2 years. We have beyond that. So we're not going to be hurt by, cutting.
And when researching, they do say about 4 to 6 months, but I had nothing that shows that. They just say that during the meeting.
Well, I've
But
interviewed different,
yeah.
the local
And
governmental bodies.
everyone I asked, they say that.
Library boards and the city hall and,
Okay, well,
Nobody has
but
near here.
we have to think about that, all of us.
This 4 to 6 months sounds a little concerning.
Yeah, well, when I've heard in the past, we haven't gotten our allotment or money for almost a year. So, they're slow sometimes in distributions, but I haven't looked at the,
Yeah, it's because the state's in big trouble, yeah, I know.
so I think, we have to think about that. Okay, so I think we can move on now to the road and bridge levy estimate.
Yeah, the road and bridge tax levy I included in the packet is the one I intend on submitting, and it's 0% increase. It's something that can be voted on today. And it's identical to the one that I submitted with the packet.
Is it,
equipment fund, right?
I know that I would also say that the appropriate estimate is the 2018 actual, but,
I think that's what he did.
Yeah.
so you're, okay, can,
Okay, wait, I'm
I'll
confused.
make a motion to chance, I don't think I can put it.
That's yours.
Oh, I didn't.
I'll make a motion to chance the estimated road district tax levy ordinance 219-RB2, but I don't have the total. So-
The total is 1 million, I'm sorry.
2,605,553.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
well, I just want to make sure that this is the 2018
All right, I'll look.
Yeah, it
actual.
is. It is.
You just looked it up?
No, I'm
No,
about.
we put this together based on the 2018.
Actual or the estimate?
No, the actual.
I have the actuals per what David said,
I'm
and
sorry, the number is 1,239,157.
No,
That,
No, that's just general road fund, that's not
That's
any
not
other funds
the-
in the road district
Oh,
fund.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. bottom
so-
number is 2,605,553
Yes.
for the 2018 December, for District 5.
Okay,
That would be the number I would make as a motion for the estimated. You know, I think we should keep them together to vote on at the appropriate time.
Okay, so I make a motion that we pass the ordinance 2019-RB-2 presented by Wally.
So she just made that motion.
She made it. So you're second.
Second. It was second.
You can second again if you want.
If I can.
Yes.
discussion.
With the motion, with the motion pending, a little bit of history. Last year, I had a huge objection because there was a significant increase in the road and bridge levy last year that I was not happy with. And I asked our road and bridge I asked our highway commissioner to not go forward with that increase, and to put a little more faith in the board that if money suddenly becomes needed, to just come before us. But I did not see the reason or the need for the funds last time. So if we're going to adopt 2019 RB2 as our estimate, that's the estimate which what I presented from last year has loaded it from last year. So I would amend the motion saying that we have as an estimate the 2019 RB2 less 20%.
Second.
I guess we have to vote on the amendment first.
Any other discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a
I would just redo my arguments that I made before that are on the record.
We got a second, okay. So what we're requesting in this levy is $2,605,553. Based on the actual expenditures that we've had for the past 5 years, which were numbers given to me from Dana today, and if these are all correct, I just want to review this. In 2015, it was $1,796,667. 2016, it was $1,937,396. 2017, we spent $2,103,000. 2018, we spent $2,081,000. And this year, we're on track to spend $1,902,180 if we spend our budget. We're talking about asking for something as an estimated levy that's now almost $700,000 more. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, I can. First of all, in property taxes, we get about 1.9 million, not 2.6. The reason that there's this enormous gap between what I have to ask for and what we actually get is for 15 or 20 years, the highway commissioner and the board would go down to Springfield and they'd have the same budget and levy hearing, ask for 4.99, get the cost of living. There's a huge gap between the cost of living and 4.99, and for the last 25 years, there's been a huge gap. You only get the 2% or 1.5, whatever the rate of inflation is. You don't get the 4.9. But on the records, the levy shows.
Well, you can't unless it's.
So, yeah, I know, and that's fine and good. You know, they were always asking for 4.9, and that's the figures you see year after year increase. But the actual amount that we get in receipts from the property tax is more in line with what we budget for, like around 1.9 million every year. Not 2.6, not what you see in the levy. And I can't do it, I can't reduce 20% because we're not reducing it by 2.6 minus 20%, you're reducing it by 1.9 and then 20% less than that. That's something that's inoperable, or if it happened for several years, it definitely would be inoperable. But, you're not going to get what the final figure, $2.6 million. You're not even getting close to that. So, and the reason is because I'm not blaming the predecessors, because that's what essentially that Robert Porter told them to do. That was the suggestion. Ask for high, 4.9, and get what you can on the CPI. But that was always a huge gap of 3 or 4% each year. And that's why it looks like I'm asking for an exorbitant amount of money only because of what was asked for, not by me, but what was asked for the last 25 years. So, you know, if you're gonna reduce the levy, and we're not even gotten to the fact that, you know, our two attorneys say that, you know, it's not a board decision, you know, to reduce it or raise it.
So what did we actually get on our levy last year?
About 1.9 million a year. That's what we actually get. And I explained why, because we asked for the sky and we got far less.
But that was what our budget is.
The budget was never 2.6 million.
No, it's 1.9.
Huh?
Our budget's 1.9.
Right, and that's pretty much what you get in property tax, so that's a good thing. It's almost equal.
So where can I look to in the annual report to actually see, or can you help us with that, Chris?
I mean, the audit report does tell you what, you know, there's different classes within road and bridge, so you have to add up all the property tax amounts to see that. And remember, you know, the audit's on a accrual basis, so there's a little different calculation, but I can send you, you know, like what Wally was saying, last year, road and bridge in total received, on a cash basis, $1,859,931.
Say that again?
$1,859,930.80.
And that was off that levy that was
And that was based on this levy that shows 2.6 million. But in reality, we got less than 1.9 million.
$1,859,930.80.
And that's what was received in 2019 or 2018?
Fiscal year, so 18-19. 3/1 of 18 to 2/28/19. So like we do have a username and password that me and Denise have access to, and Dana, that when I do the books monthly, you know, I go online and I see what we collected. So you can run reports that say, hey, what did we receive in the month of X? And for, you know, for instance, when I do the audit, I run the collection report for the fiscal year that I'm auditing. And then within those collection numbers, if you dig a little deeper, it will break it down by what levy was collected from.
Now, Chris, is my analysis incorrect? When you ask for the max and you get far less, there's this gap?
No, you're absolutely right.
I would say though, based on Wally's representations and Chris's representations, just relying on that, okay, and I have to see it, that I would withdraw my motion to amend at this point. But I have to see it,
we did.
You know, I'll bring you the last 3 to 5 years of what we actually received.
I'm sure what you're telling me is correct, just so I have it for my
Well, it's
files.
just-
That's why
Well,
I'm withdrawing the motion.
Yeah, and that's bad because, I mean, now the CPI index is 1.9, but it was higher. So that is concerning
Yeah,
because it was higher and they did
and
that.
I'm gonna ask for 0. What you
I
see
mean-
now is what I'm gonna submit for
For
the
budget?
for the levy for December vote is what you see today.
But also keeping in mind, I know I'm harping, but just keeping in mind that if the highway commissioner needs more funds, there's always emergencies. I mean, I think just come to the board, you know, we'll work, and I appreciate that.
Okay, so can we call the question? Oh, wait, Carrie Lynn, did you want to clarify something?
Yes, you can go ahead and take the vote, but then I need to clarify something on the record.
Okay, so can we call the question?
Supervisor Marask?
And this is on my,
Yes.
on your original?
Yes. Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee Swindle?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Carrie Lynn.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make a statement on the record because I'm just the township attorney and I don't, for policy reasons, however you're going to do, I don't really have a horse in the race, but I can't let some statements stay on the record uncountered related to pending township surpluses or potential litigation, because if a tax rate objection ever gets filed against the township, What I don't want to happen is that the attorneys are going to come and say, well, you have trustees stating in public here these great surpluses. Based on the document, the February 28th, 2019 balance sheet that was handed to us, there's nothing on this document which indicates there continues to be a significant balance, not even in general assistance. So what this is showing with the restricted fund balance here and the total liabilities for that month, now this was from February of 2019, which was 7 months ago, 8 months ago. So this doesn't reflect, as the auditor indicated, the fact that we had a zero levy for GA. So that's automatically going to reduce that by $800,000. And if you multiply out the liabilities times 3, don't even put in there the $200,000 we're going to have to repay, we don't have a surplus.
The 200,000 is not part of that.
That's just a cash.
Okay, all right, well, even with that being the case, what my point is even without that, this does not show that there's going to be an ongoing surplus like as of today. So when the tax rate objectors come and if we ever get challenged on this and they're saying, well, the basis of our lawsuit is your trustees saying that there are these massive surpluses, there's nothing here before us today that actually shows that there are surpluses in these funds. So I think we have to be very careful about stating that publicly on an old document, because I don't want to create a position where we have tax rate objectors looking for evidence that doesn't exist.
You
So,
couldn't have said that.
well,
We do have surpluses.
What is our current balance?
Right. We do have surplus.
What Carrie Lynn is saying is
not
that
illegal surpluses.
Right, so what you're saying is that it doesn't violate the statute. But what I think when I was making my comments, I am projecting forward, looking at these numbers that we're asking for, and I think we get into a precarious position. We're in the ballpark as far as what my thought process is. I'm not saying right now that there's an immediate basis, but we do have significant surplus, whether we call it legal or not legal or whatever. And with that significant surplus, we should not be asking whether it's legal, whether we get hit by the statute or not. It's the wrong thing to do is to ask for a greater amount of money. That's
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
That's fine.
Okay.
I didn't hear your answer.
I'd have to look at the system to get that. And I could do that, and I'd have to make one little journal entry for the GA payable that went up, because remember, on a monthly basis, we keep our books on a cash basis. The only time we do accruals is during the audit. But for the GA fund, I'll make that entry so it's clear how much we owe them, so that that money's pulled out of the reserve amount. Because it's going to look like we have more in GA on a cash basis because we still owe money back to the county.
And you think it's about 200,000?
Yeah, from just guessing on the top of my head, it would be that, 'cause by the audit, it was like 100.
Yeah, you've been pretty close on all the numbers I've ever gotten, so.
So is it possible for us to get a surplus, the surplus numbers as the end of October?
The best I could do is, the last time we've been reconciled will be through October 31st.
Oh,
So I'm here tomorrow in the afternoon. What I can do is, I'll get the book straightened out, so you guys can see what our fund balance is as of 10/31, and then I'll make the entry in the GA fund that puts the liability on the book, saying this is what we owe as of 10/31 tax to the county.
Is that on a cash basis or accrual basis?
Will be at that point it's on a cash basis. Remember, accruals are only audit entries. There's no way I can go through and post payables and receivables. It would take weeks.
Okay. Well, that would be very helpful, because at least then we'll know where we stand when we're making this decision in December.
again, thanks for the help, both
Yes.
Dan and Chris, fantastic.
Okay.
And also, I will try to contact the county before the next meeting to try to figure out why did they withhold taxes from people prior to the time we filed the abatement, which was before, before we extended the taxes, how can they know how much to withhold? That doesn't make any
I
sense to me.
remember you had us do it on time.
Well, right,
Well, yeah, because you said we have time and we were
And we
told.
did exactly.
And then
So why would
we
they
wanted to do it
withhold-
sooner to avoid that very issue.
Well, I don't know if that would have though.
No,
That's why I need to talk to
that's why I
them
think
and
you're
figure
right,
out
I
what they
think it
did.
would have made a difference.
Yeah, what right do they have to do that? Makes no
Okay.
sense.
Next on the agenda is the approval of gift cards for food pantry boxes. So we received a memo from Dana. Dana, are you requesting these?
It's for the gift
You're
cards that
related.
we're giving out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Will be gift cards, Caroline and food pantry has requested.
Okay,
I
so,
didn't hear that.
Caroline from the food pantry requested.
And what's it based on? How?
It's 300 gift cards for $40 for Aldi that will be distributed to the food pantry patrons.
That is correct. The latest numbers showing, I've been helping, I have Caroline and, Claire. They have Carol Langen's latest numbers, and it's about $297. So the gift cards are so that they can buy their own size, because we have many different cultures and whatnot. And so and we finally got them to let us do it, like she had done the groceries and bulk. So we need to order the gift cards, because we had to hold off so that this is the last day in order to get it for Thanksgiving. I'm not even sure if we're going to be able to get it for Thanksgiving. I think this might be just for Christmas Day, is that right?
Right.
Yes, because we didn't do it for Thanksgiving.
Right.
Because we couldn't get it on the board in time, and I didn't want to spend your money without.
so do we usually do it this way, or do we provide?
We do.
Okay.
Every year.
Is 300
We get
roughly what we-
donates the turkey and, some of the trimming, and then we give them a $40 gift card. So, which is a special gift card that cannot be used for alcohol, tobacco, lottery tickets, and any other restricted item. And so that's what has to be issued by, separately. And yes, that is their extra little thing that they can then buy the size that they want.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or more discussion?
Jewel is also,
Susan?
I'm sorry, giving $50 dinner, so I don't know if there's any correlation to that. We're not paying
Well,
for
this
it.
is the size,
Separate,
not
right?
the turkey, right? This is the
Correct.
size.
Just the sides.
This is size.
I couldn't hear.
That's just the sides, we were saying. Not the
They
turkey.
had the turkey, and I believe something donated, I told.
That's,
But this is for, in the past, we used to try to do all the sides, or some sides. And then we had a lot of people, like returning things that they would need, or whatever. So, this was worked out for our best, especially because it's here to exclude the categories generally needing to be excluded. And they love it. I mean, it works out very well.
It's a very nice thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I will say, this is an exercise when we have the fire and the landing. It doesn't, if there's any extra, they don't go to waste. I mean, those were used to help homeless people that were rendered homeless by that fire. But this is a very good, very close approximation, and especially now that, we have more food pantry people. So, today is the last day in order to be able to do it for Christmas. So I'll make the motion to approve the gift card for the food pantry.
Second.
Okay. Call the vote.
Well, and we need a second. Is there a second?
Oh, Dave seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Supervisor Marasco?
Yeah.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabona?
Yes.
Trustee Swett?
yes.
And I believe that concludes the meeting tonight.
Call to adjourn.
Call to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good job.
Thank you.